You've you found the home you love. Then your agent says you need to put down an escrow deposit. Your first thought is, am I going to lose my money? Let's break it down so you'll know exactly what an escrow deposit is, what it does, and how to protect it. Let's go ahead and dive on in. Your escrow deposit, also sometimes called your earnest money deposit, is not an additional fee. It is money that you are going to put down to show that you are serious about buying the property. It's typically held by a neutral third party, not the seller, and so what it is a sign of intent. For old school folks, I explain an escrow deposit almost like it's a layaway. Back in the day, remember, before credit cards were everywhere, you wanted to buy something, you didn't have all the money. You went to the store, you told them to take it off the shelves, you made a deposit, and every week you came back and you made additional payments until you paid it off. Think of your escrow deposit as that initial payment that you make to the store owner to be able to take the property off the market, to take the merchandise off the shelf so that you can reserve it to be able to ultimately buy it. That is the simplest explanation that I can give of an escrow deposit, and it does exactly the same thing. It takes the house out of circulation so that you will have time to gather your resources, gather your funding, take care of all of the paperwork that is required to ultimately be able to close on that property. To be able to protect your funds, that escrow deposit does not go to the seller. Unlike the example with the layaway with the merchant, the store owner, where your funds actually went to the store owner to hold that merchandise, typically in earnest money or escrow deposit, it goes to one of three places. It either goes to a title company, typically the title company that will be preparing the documents for closing. It goes to the real estate brokerage to be held in their escrow account, so not to be dispersed except in accordance with the agreement that all parties reach, or it goes to an attorney. It does not go to the seller. These funds are set aside. They're not being used in general operating funds or accounts. This is money that is reserved, set aside, and there are very specific rules that apply to how escrow deposits can be treated by real estate agents and how they can be released or used as a part of the ongoing real estate transaction. Typically, your escrow deposit is going to be between 1% and 3% of the purchase price of the property. So for example, if you're buying a home for $300,000, your escrow deposit could be somewhere between $3,000 and $9,000. Again, it's a deposit to show that you are in good faith intending to purchase the property. Now, one thing to keep in mind from the seller's perspective is that the bigger the deposit is, the stronger the offer. So stronger offers come with bigger deposits because that is money that's on the table, and if you don't perform, your deposit can be at risk. So when a buyer is willing to put more of a deposit at risk, it's seen to be a sign of serious intent because they know that if they don't perform, that money could be lost. Another question that I'm often asked is, does the money go towards the purchase? And yes, what happens is the title company who's preparing the closing documents will compile all the numbers. They'll look at the purchase price, they will look at the financing that is being put in place, they're going to look at the initial deposit, the down payment that is being provided by the buyer. They're going to be looking at the closing costs that are going to be incurred by the buyer. They're going to calculate all of the numbers to figure out what dollars, if any, the buyer has to bring to closing. Factoring into that calculation is your escrow deposit. So for example, say they did your calculation and without you making the escrow deposit, you had to bring $10,000 to closing, but because you have a $5,000 escrow deposit, you now bring only $5,000. So it factors into the overall calculation. It's not an extra fee. Again, like a layaway, it's not an additional charge. It's something that is just a part of the calculation, and it is mainly there to show seriousness of intent on the part of the buyer. Now, as I alluded to earlier, when you make an escrow deposit or an earnest money deposit, those funds are on the table, so they are at risk. And the biggest question that I get from buyers who are looking to purchase or to make a deposit, they want to know if they'll get their deposit back. And you will get your deposit back if the deal falls through during the contingency period. In other words, there's some contingencies in your contract: inspection, financing, appraisal contingencies. And if your deal falls through because of one of those contingencies, then you get your funds back. However, if you just decide that you're going to change your mind and back out of the contract for no valid reason, just because you've had a change of heart or you missed your contractual deadlines and you did not perform, those funds are at risk and could be demanded by the seller because of your failure to perform on your contract. So it's really important to make sure that you understand the contract, one, and two, that you are in compliance with the terms of the arrangement. One of the clauses in real estate contracts is a clause that says time is of the essence. Not only do you have to perform, but you have to perform within the timelines to make sure that your deposit is protected. So you may be asking yourself, what are the contingencies? What are the ways in which I can get out of a contract and not lose my deposit? Well, the first way is through an inspection. Say an inspection is done and it reveals some defects with the property that you and the seller cannot negotiate your way out of. It's too much for you to take on. You're not willing to do that. The seller is not willing to correct. Due to problems with the inspection, you don't wish to move forward. That is a legitimate concern. That is a contingency on the plan. Do note that inspections typically have a timeline. So if you're looking to use that contingency to get out of the contract, you would need to know, one, what the timeline is, and make sure that you communicate to the seller within the specified time frame. Because if you have a 10-day inspection period and you communicate on day 11, that protection is no longer available to you, and that is considered to be a default on your part, a breach on your part of the contract because it did not take place within the time frame. Another contingency is financing. It makes perfect sense. If you don't get the loan, you're not going to be able to afford the property. So if your loan is denied or there are significant changes in terms that make it not viable for you to go forward with the purchasing of the property, that could be a very legitimate way to cancel the contract, notify the seller, and get your funds back. And a third way is the appraisal. The property is listed for $400,000. You've made an offer for $400,000. The appraisal is done. It comes back at $380,000. There's a $20,000 gap. Again, you and the seller can't seem to reach an accord in terms of how to proceed. Totally legitimate for you to decide not to go forward and that you are going to cancel the contract and request your money back. Another contingency that's not on the slide is if the property is located in a condo or homeowners association. That typically will require, mandatory associations require approval. So if your application is denied for whatever reason, then that is usually an allowed exit strategy to get out of a contract and to request your funds back. And then most contracts have a provision for an act of God if there is some major structural damage to the property, fire, flood, some act of God that destroys the property, that puts it in a condition beyond, that's not comparable to what it was in when you made your offer, and it will take the seller a significant amount of time, and that amount of time is usually predefined in the contract. If it will take more than that amount of time to bring it back into compliance, then you do have the option. You're not required to wait indefinitely for the property to be repaired. Typically in the contract, it will have a provision for you to cancel the contract and to move forward with getting your deposit back. But those are typically the 5 exit strategies that I have seen in contracts that will allow a buyer to cancel and then still be able to get their funds back. Please note, I changed my mind is not one of the options. So just changing your mind is not going to be enough to protect your deposit. You have to exit through one of the contingencies if your plan is to get your deposit back. Some common mistakes that you want to avoid, and I talked about it a little bit, I alluded to it a little earlier, missing contract deadlines, even for contingencies that are identified in your contract. Most of them will have some type of timeline. If you miss the time frame, or if you miss the allowed time to exercise that protection to take advantage of that contingency, then the contingency essentially goes away and the protection is lost. So making sure that you're within your contract deadlines. Assuming that you can cancel at any time, that is not the case. That's I changed my mind, and in that case your deposit is most certainly at risk, and chances are the seller will demand the deposit for breach of contract. And then never ever wire funds without verifying. In this day and age, we have so much wire fraud. Make sure that you are very careful in getting funds over to the appropriate parties, and make sure that you are sure that the information that you get is accurate, because typically funds that are wired are very, very difficult to recapture. So you want to be super careful where that is concerned. If you still have questions about an escrow deposit, please feel free to visit my website at simplyaskSharon.com, where you can schedule a complimentary 15-minute phone consult with me, where we can talk specifically about the details and your specific circumstance. We'll go through the escrow process and the home buying process step by step, so that you'll know exactly what to expect. I hope that you found this video helpful. If you did, please like it. Also, please remember to subscribe to my channel so you can be notified when new videos are released. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again next time.